Hello and welcome to Raw Architecture. My name is Andrew Hernandez. I'm a California licensed architect, and today we're going to discuss what is an architect. Most people have a general understanding of what an architect is. Whenever I meet people though, they often say something to the effect of, so you make buildings? Do you pick the counters and cabinets? Do you like tile or wood flooring? What kind of buildings do you do? New construction, remodels, commercial, retail, residential? Where do you work? Who's your favorite architect? What is your favorite style? What are you working on right now? Now, before we get started, I'd like to invite you to visit the Amazon link below to see my book, How to Become an Architect Without a Degree. It is a guide to understanding the entire architectural licensing process in North America, available in paperback and Kindle. In this book, you will learn what an architect is, what an architect does, how much architects make, and of course, how to become an architect. So, what is an architect? The Wikipedia definition reads, an architect is a person who plans, designs, and oversees the construction of buildings. Practice architecture means to provide services in connection with the design of buildings and the space within the site surrounding the buildings that have human occupancy or use as their principal purpose. This is accurate for most of the world. I think for licensed architects in the US, Canada, and US territories, the last part is not exactly correct. Many of the states require a licensed contractor to oversee the construction. The architect still has an important role during construction, but the means and methods of the actual construction work fall under the licensed contractor and subcontractors. Additionally, there are two main things to know about architects in the US, Canada, and the US territories. No one can use the term architect or architecture if they are not licensed. Only licensed architects can practice architecture. There's no difference between an architect and a licensed architect. And the main reason architects are required to be licensed is because of public health and safety. Public health includes cleanliness, air quality, clean water, trash disposal, sewer disposal, as they relate to the building and the property. Public safety includes fire, earthquake resistances, hurricane resistances, power failures as they relate to the building and the property. Very simply, you want the building to be safe to use, and then you want the building to maintain that safety in the times of emergency, whether it's an earthquake or a fire. You want the occupants to be able to get out of the building before the building fails. So public health and safety, this public health and safety aspect does have a lot more depth, and that depth comes in the form of the building code. The building code defines the health requirements. It defines the safety requirements of the structure that you're then going to design, or as the architect you're going to design. And this leads to the question, what do architects do? It's actually very hard to sum up in a few short sentences without overgeneralizing or phrasing it in a way that explains it all. Very simply though, we design buildings and properties. Now, what's involved with designing a building or a property is where we get into the depth of modern architecture practice. The architect must take all of the required components and apply them to the property and the building. These components include building systems, building code, city ordinances, public health and safety, aesthetics, function, project requirements, client needs, client wants, land limitations, and a whole host of variables that can and will influence the design. So when I say building systems, I'm talking about the basics: concrete foundation, the walls, roof, electrical systems for lights, outlets, switches, plumbing for water and waste, and air conditioning, ducting. When I say building code, I'm referring to the current building code that enforces the public health and safety. For me, we use the California Building Code. It's based on the International Building Code. It has amendments that are specific and unique to the landscape and politics of California. We have wildfires, earthquakes, flash flooding, power outages, snow, and the longest coastline in the US. We are also the leading state in implementing renewable energy requirements and reducing CO2 emissions. Not by the numbers, but by the law. In addition to the California Building Code, we also have the Green Building Code and the California Energy Code, as well as a number of amendments to the California Electric Code, Mechanical Code, Plumbing Code, Fire Code, which all have a number of requirements for a building project. There are also local, city, and county jurisdictional requirements. The city and counties we live in are responsible for providing the infrastructure that the cities function on. These are utilities, roads, highways, limitations to the property, police, fire, how the tax revenue is used, and where the tax revenue is used. These all have an impact on how you build your project within that city or county. When you go to do a project, you're paying permit fees, you're paying taxes, you're paying school fees. All of these components all contribute to the overall infrastructure of the city or the county, and your impact on that city or county through your project is going to be charged accordingly within that jurisdiction. There are so many requirements and considerations when you are developing a property. The architect uses all of this information to come up with a design. I say design or rather a design solution, because at this point we are attempting to solve a problem. That problem being, we need a building, house, factory, shopping mall, remodel, building alteration, whatever it is, it needs to go through this process of following the building code requirements, implementing all of the jurisdictional requirements, meeting all of the limitations of the site, fulfilling the needs and the wants of the client as well. Now, that being said, the next question would be, what are architects responsible for? Aren't there structural engineers, civil engineers, interior designers that do some of that stuff? And the answer is yes. However, the architect is unique in that he or she is the only trained professional trained in all aspects of design and interpretation of those requirements. Where the structural engineer is trained in calculating loads and forces, the civil engineer is trained in utilities, stormwater drainage, grading and topography, and earth manipulation, or the MEP engineer who's trained in electrical, plumbing, and mechanical systems within the building. Those professions cannot perform their work without the basis of design, and that is the responsibility of the architect, to come up with the design base that satisfies all of the jurisdictional requirements and the needs of the client and work in a synergistic manner. So that the city is satisfied with their requirements, the building code is satisfied with their requirements, and the client is satisfied with their needs and wants within the project. So what are architects responsible for? They're responsible for designing the site layout, building layout, and elevations, while interpreting the legal requirements, building code requirements, applying the needs of the client, drafting blueprints, coordinating the building systems with the required engineers, and processing through the local jurisdiction for permit review and code compliance, assisting the contractor and owner during construction for proper application of the intended design. So when the contractor is reading the blueprints, are they reading the blueprints correctly? Are they ordering the correct materials? Are they staying within the intended design and not shortcutting or shortchanging the owner with inferior materials? So some of you may not be familiar with architects, some of you might, and we get into kind of the weeds of architecture, and I hear things like, why do architects always talk about form and function and style? Why are some buildings so ugly? Why are some buildings so complicated? Why do architects not listen to their clients? These are some of the questions I hear people asking, and once again, there are many answers, but I personally break down how I practice architecture into 3 categories: client needs, jurisdictional requirements, design, and aesthetics. Many architects highly focus on the third item. Their practice of architecture is an expression and very much an artistic mindset. And many of those architects have an amazing eye for design, but lack the interest in the other 2 items and think that they are limiting, and in some cases they're correct. However, the building code exists because the government needs to restrict and control how we develop cities. It exists because of the history of construction, the history of failures, the history of fires, and the history of humans congregating so densely in what we now call cities. Look at London, look at New York, look at Paris, Rome. Prior to the 1900s, when the building code was developed, there was fire, disease, overpopulation. All of these variables contributed to the creation of the building code, the definition of public health and safety as a priority. And personally, I agree with most of these requirements. I don't want people flinging buckets of excrement into a muddy street next to a series of buildings that only has one door and hosts 30 families. When that building catches on fire, those people are gone. But take a look at Frank Gehry. He probably has the most recognizable style to the general populace nowadays. The Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles is a masterpiece. He and his team built that structure in one of the most strictest cities on earth, Los Angeles. The project took 15 years from start to finish, but they still got it done. Look at the Parliament building in Bangladesh, designed by my favorite architect, Kahn. Again, an absolute masterpiece. His architecture has been described as timeless, and I absolutely agree with this. It looks like it could have been built centuries ago, and it also looks like it could have been built just 10 years ago. He also has the Exeter Library and the Kimball Art Museum, both, again, masterpieces of architecture. Now, again, architects sometimes don't listen to their clients. Sometimes architects can't always listen to their clients. Very simply, we're beholden to the law and the code. Some clients are very type A, run a business, or have a vast amount of wealth and are rarely told no, if ever. So when I say no, it's because that's what I was hired to do for my training and for my understanding of the limitations within a project. To know when to follow the limitations, when to bend the limitations, and when to break the limitations. And when I'm talking about limitations, I'm usually talking about the law. And once you break down the law to its most basic form, from one human to another, it comes down to interpretation. Some interpretations are very black and white. Most are in a gray area, and the building code is no exception to this. We often say no to protect ourselves, to protect the client, and sometimes to protect the client from themselves. Depending on the client though, an alternative to telling them no is to show them in plan or design why something doesn't work. But look, these are delicate conversations, and while they are a paying client, me as the architect is also providing an immense amount of time and effort to bring their project to life. This is often a multi-year relationship, so having a good rapport and open dialogue with one another is the best way to move the project forward. It's a team effort, but it must be led by the architect. These are the basics of what an architect is, what an architect does, what an architect's responsible for. So if you're looking to hire an architect, you want your architect to have these understandings, balancing the requirements for the jurisdiction, delivering the needs and wants of the client, and then absolutely nailing the design and aesthetics of the project. In my experience though, every single project is very unique. There are very site-specific variables that impact this approach, but even with the simplest of projects, an architect can make all the difference in the world, and hiring the right architect for a project is key. Now, thank you for watching. I appreciate you stopping by and staying till the end of the video. If you'd like to support this channel further, please like, subscribe, and you can also check out the links in the description below for our digital products, AutoCAD templates, books, and see you in the next one.